Today we're starting a 4-week conversation about tacos. Who doesn't love tacos? But relationships are like tacos, right? You got the Jesus on the outside, the hard shell, and then you got all the good stuff on the inside that comes from Jesus, right? So relationships are like tacos. I just made that up on the fly. Somebody put a taco on my notes in the back, so that's why I said that. Anyway, today we're starting a 4-week conversation on relationships. And the really cool thing about what we're going to talk about for the next 4 weeks is that you can use what we're talking about in any relationship where there is male-female interaction. Husband-wife, mother-daughter, that's really not girl, but you get what I'm saying. You can still use the concepts, any kind of relationship really. Mother-son, father-daughter. Even get this, you and your boss or you and your coworkers, okay? These concepts apply in all these different situations. I will primarily be speaking in the aspect of marriage. But the cool thing is you can take these concepts, these things that we're going to talk about for the next 4 weeks, and you can use them outside of the marriage relationship. Because here's the cool thing about relationships, right? Relationships can be some of the best things in the world for us to experience. But they can also be some of the hardest things in the world for us to experience, right? Because, let's be real, some of your greatest regrets and some of your greatest hurts come from some of your best relationships that you have with people. Right? So they're great things to have, but they can also be the hardest thing for you to experience. So, and without doubt, marriage relationships can be hard, right? Anybody agree with that? All right, if you're married, right? They're not exactly all rainbows and unicorns, okay? So, like, me and Carol, we met in high school, but we never dated, right? She knew me. I was about half of what I am now, literally. But, like, and the weird thing is, like, I never wanted to date her. I don't think that was the case the other way, but I never wanted to date her. It's true. She told me all this. Okay? The details are from her because I'm not a detail guy, right? So, but I was, but she was one of my really good friends, and she kind of forced herself into my circles because she wanted to be around me. Her words, not mine, okay? Just letting y'all know, okay? But she was always there for me, even when I would blow her off for other girls, because I don't want to say women because they were girls. They were high school girls, okay? When I would be the stupid one, she was always there. Right? And then 2018, I signed up for the military, and I never told my parents for like 3 months after I did it. Wow, 2002, I signed up for the military. I wish it was 2018. I'd be really young right now, right? Anyways, so a long time ago, 2002, I signed up for the military. I never told my parents. That was a mistake. Don't do that. Sign up, tell your parents, okay? Anyway, so I ended up getting deployed to Iraq at 19 in 2003. So weird to say 2003 now when you're saying 2019. So 2003, I get deployed to Iraq in April. I was there till March 2004. While I was in Iraq, I got really close to God. Literally went to a desert to experience my relationship with God, okay? So I have a desert story. You guys have one. It might not be a physical desert, but you have a desert story probably. Okay? So while I was in Iraq, I felt this gumption in my spirit that I needed to get a hold of Carol, who I didn't have her phone number, I didn't have her address, I didn't have her email, not that email was really a thing yet, I didn't have her AOL Instant Messenger ID, her Yahoo Messenger ID, let's go old school, okay? Like I didn't have any of it. So anyway, I write a letter to my friend, John Atkins, mutual friend of ours, who works across the street from where she lives. Anyways, he runs into her, asks, hey, John, what's your that was my nickname in high school, don't call me that. John, what's your address so he can write you some letters in Iraq? So she gives him the address, we start writing, right? Crazy story, because I can't know. So back then in 2002, 2003, 2004, when you were writing letters from Iraq, there was no Skype, there was none of that stuff. So it was literally, I would write a message, it would take 2 weeks to get from Iraq to America. Then she would have to get it, respond, and then it was 2 weeks before I got it back. Okay, so 4 weeks between letters, at least, okay? Crazy thing is, she was writing me a letter and sending me a letter that was asking me a question, and I was writing her and responding to the question she was asking at the same time. So literally, I'm answering her questions, And the answers are coming to her as I'm receiving the questions. Okay? And the question was like, hey, I feel like this is supposed to, like, is this legit? Like, what is going on here? So I'm answering the questions, right? So anyways, we talked about getting engaged, and we talked about getting married. So literally, I come home from Iraq for 2 weeks. I propose to Carol. We go on our first date. I proposed to Carol, then we went on our first date, okay? So we hung out for 2 weeks. I did some stupid things. She forgave me. We're still engaged. Okay, great. Anyways, so I go back to Colorado for about a month, right? While I'm gone for that month and a half, her and her family and my family plan the entire wedding. I come back a month and a half for another 2 weeks. We get married. We go on a 7-day honeymoon. I pack her up and I move her to Colorado. She's never been away from her family. She's never lived anywhere other than in her parents' house. And I picked her up and I moved her halfway across the country. There was some conflict. It wasn't all rainbows and unicorns, okay? So I'm not going to talk about, honestly, it's really cool because we don't remember a lot of, she remembers more than I. I don't remember a lot of the conflicts, okay? But the most recent conflict that we've been having has to deal with my phone. Okay, I like playing video games on my phone. And the problem is when I find a video game that I really like, 2 things happen. I spend all my time on it, and I spend all of our money on it. Okay? So, like literally, I would be sitting on the couch when we're supposed to be having family time, and I'd be sitting there, and slowly but surely, I would see Carol's countenance and her spirit kind of deflate. And she would say something that I would then react to, and then all of a sudden we're in this argument, when really the thing that we were arguing about wasn't the thing that we were arguing about. And because of the way she would respond to the fact that I was on my phone, overspending on money, way overspending on money, I'm talking way overspending, like if there was another word for way over, I would use it, but way overspending on games, and way overspending time on my phone, she would become deflated. And because of the way she would respond to that, I would become deflated. And all of a sudden, there's conflict. And even though Carol and I understood what we're about to talk about, it still happens. And like most of you, you have those moments. You realize that there is something deeper going on in those moments than the fact that I'm playing a game on a video phone, or playing a game on my phone. Or me not being present and spending time with the family when that's what I'm supposed to be doing. There's something deeper going on. Like most of us have been in some kind of conflict with someone when all of a sudden you realize the thing that you thought you were fighting about really isn't the thing that you're fighting about. Because you go, hold on, what are we even fighting about? Am I the only one here? Great. No, preach to myself again. Okay, that's cool. Right? There's just something going on. There's something that maybe you haven't learned yet about managing conflict in a relationship. And here's the thing. Me and Carol are 2 completely different people. Way different people, okay? Right? And Carol needs one thing, and I need another thing. And there was a period in our time where we both, in some way, believed that we both needed the same thing, but we were wrong. So today we're going to start this conversation, and this is all based off of a message series and a small group curriculum done by Dr. Emerson Eggridge called Love and Respect. They should have a nice little thing up there that says Love and Respect. Love and respect. Woo! Thank you, Allison, for the beautiful graphics that you did for free. Thank you so much, okay? And I hope that just because you aren't married or you're single again or you're not in a relationship currently, that you don't just check out because you think I'm talking about marriage relationships, okay? Because as I said earlier, you can apply this to all kinds of relationships everywhere. And my hope is that I'm going to give you guys some tools over the next 4 weeks to help you manage conflicts and strengthen your communication within all types of relationships. And I would challenge you now to take notes and pay attention and see if God can't use what you hear over the next 4 weeks to strengthen some relationships in your life. And one of the reasons and the reason that Carol is so passionate about this It's because many, many times we have seen our friends and family members walk away from marriages because they didn't know. They didn't have the information. No matter how hard me and Carol tried to give it to them, they were so resistant to it. And I want to take the opportunity to give you the information whether you like it or not. And if you heard me preach, like if you've ever heard me preach, you guys understand. Like, I want to ensure you guys get this. I want you to understand that the other person, they're not wrong. They're just different. They're not wrong. They're just different. Because I truly believe that if you're married to a person, and that person is a good-willed person, meaning that that person isn't generally evil about what they're doing towards you, with the proper tools and the proper things on your tool belt to use, even if there's infidelity in the relationship. That's a big statement, y'all. Even if there's infidelity, adultery in the relationship, I believe if you're married to a good-willed person, these tools, and I'm not saying that's going to be an easy road to go down. I'm just saying that with these tools, there might be able to be reconciliation in the relationship the way God designed it. That even with all the junk, you can move in the direction that God has towards that reconciliation. And I just want you to know that the reason why I'm so passionate about this, if you've heard me talk for more than a day, you've heard me say this. Because after 9 years of being married to Carol, I asked her for a divorce because I wanted to throw it all away. Because I did not have the tools. So we're going to give you the tools. And I want you to have them. And I want you to use them because relationships are important. All relationships are important. I mean, dude, were you here last week? So the question is, what are these tools? What is it that we've got that we want to give you that seems to make our relationship better or look better or whatever you want to say? So let's take a look. Ephesians 5, verses 21 through 33. And further, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. So there's this weird thing, if you were here last year or the year before that, we talked about mutual submission, the race to the back of the line. That's really what he's talking about. Paul's writing here. I'm not getting into that. For wives, this means submit to your husband as unto the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, just as Christ is the head of the church. He is the Savior of his body, the church. As the church submits to Christ, so wives should submit to your husbands in everything. For husbands, this means love your wives, just as Christ loved his church. He gave his life up for her, to make her holy and clean, washed by the cleansing of God's word. He did this to present her to himself as a glorious church without spot or wrinkle or any other blemish. Instead, she will be holy and without fault. In the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as they love their own bodies. For a man who loves his wife actually shows love for himself. No one hates his own body, but they feed it and they care for it. Nobody hates their own meat suit. You might hate the way it looks, but you don't hate it. You take care of it, right? Just as Christ cares for his church. We are all members of his body. As the scripture says, a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. This is a great mystery, but it is an illustration of the way Christ and the church are one. Now, I want to stop here real quick and just say this. This is one of the coolest things that Paul says in this passage, okay? Not the best thing, but one of the coolest things, right? Because Paul nails it, right? It's a great mystery how two people who grew up differently, two people who pay bills differently, two people who drive differently, two people who deal with conflict differently, two people who can separate clothes and wash them differently. Those two people, completely different people, can be joined and become one flesh. And if you've been married for any amount of time, like me, you've thought, how does this work? It makes no sense. because it's a mystery. And Paul tells us, it's like Christ in the church. It's a mystery. It's like, how do you fathom? How does it work? And then he finishes off with how it works. So again, I say, each man must love his wife as he loved himself. And the wife must respect her husband. And that's where we're going. That's where we're going to camp out for the next couple of weeks. Husbands, love your wives. Wives, respect your husband. But in the world that we live in, it's all about love. All you need is love. Love will keep us alive. But that's not what the Bible teaches us about the relationship between husbands and wife, male and female. Why did God tell us to do this? Why did God tell us to do this? Why did Paul make this last statement, the epicenter of what marriage should be? Why this? This might shine, what I'm about to tell you might shine some light on it, okay? The University of Washington studied 2,000 couples for over 20 years. That's a long study. So that's 4,000 people, more than 4,000 people for over 20 years. And this was the conclusion that they said to. In the couples, in the marriages that went the distance, there was a strong undercurrent of love and respect. The direct opposite of, and the antidote for, contempt. Perhaps the most corrosive force in a marriage. That was what they found in their study of 20 years about over 2,000 couples. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, John, you don't know the problems we have. You don't know the money problems or the problems about the overbearing in-laws. Sorry, CK. You're not overbearing. I love you. I'm not talking about you, okay? Or the problems that we have with the kids. John, if we didn't have the problems, then our relationship would be fine. Our relationship would be so much better. That's not true. I don't believe that to be true at all. Because no matter what the problems you have in the relationship, because life is full of problems. Problems create stress. Stress causes us to react a certain way, and the way we react in that certain way shows our spouse the true nature of who we are. And those reactions really show the inner part of who we are, the part that of us that we try to keep hidden from other people. That's why when we come to church, we have a mask on and we hide, even though we were screaming at each other in the car. Right? And it doesn't matter what the problem is, it matters about the person and what that person is willing to do or not willing to do to make the relationship work. Now, Dr. Emerson did a study of about 7,000 people in which they asked this most interesting question. Here's the question. When you are in conflict with your spouse or significant other, do you feel unloved or disrespected? Don't say it out loud. We haven't gotten there yet. But the results of that study were staggering. Staggering. 83% of men said that in conflict, they felt disrespected. While 72% of women said that they felt unloved. So this study that Dr. Emerson did literally confirmed everything Paul was talking about 2,000 years ago. Yet, Paul got it wrong. That's not what we need. All you need is love. There's this point during conflict where she needs something different from what he needs. That men in conflict don't need to be coddled and rubbed on the back to they need to feel like you still respect them and care for them and honor them as who they are as a man. And that women in conflict don't need to be told that you love them. They need to feel that you love them. So there's this disconnect and conflict where we try to give something to a person that isn't their felt need during conflict. For example, back to the cell phone thing. Carol it wasn't the fact that I was playing on the phone. Carol didn't feel that I was loving her because I wasn't spending time in relationship with her. I was spending time in relationship with the phone. So she felt unloved by my actions of playing on my phone. Which then, because of that, she would say something very passive-aggressive typically, that would make me feel like I was disrespected. And then off we go to the races. Though we all need love and respect. I'm not saying that women don't need to feel respected and men don't need to feel loved. But the felt need during conflict is different. Not wrong, just different. That in conflict, women need to feel like we still love them. And in conflict, ladies, we men need to feel like you still respect us and like us. It's not wrong. It's just different. So how do we do this? How do we love our wives? How do we respect our husbands? Why would this be the imperative that Paul would give us on marriage? Why do men have to love their wives and wives have to respect their husband? One reason is this. Women are designed by God to be more loving than men. It is their nature to nurture. For example, when your kid gets hurt while playing, do they run to dad or do they run to mom? They run to mom because dad's going to be like, rub some dirt in it, get up, suck it up, buttercup, let's go. Right? We don't nurture them. That's not how we are wired. They run to mom because mom's going to be like, oh, are you okay? And we're like, he's fine. Not wrong, just different. Ladies have this natural ability to love and to love unconditionally, and they have patience more often than us guys do. Now, do they blow it and sometimes go all She-Hulk on the kids? Absolutely. But your tendency as a woman, by the way God designed you, is to love better than us guys. You show your feelings better than us guys. And the reason God commands us to love our wives, guys, is because it isn't natural for us to do what the women do. Loving isn't the man's first native language. It's not. And in a marriage relationship, women need to know that we love them as their husband. And they need to know that they are cared for. And they need to see the emotions in the husbands. Guys, that means you have to open up a little bit. You got to let the curtains down. And Paul even reiterates this thought to the church at Colossae in Colossians 3:19, where he says, husbands, love your wives and never treat them harshly. Why, Paul? Why? Because it's how God wired them. They need to feel loved. And when you speak harshly to your wife, 90% of the time you're going to see her spirit deflate. Because it's not how they're wired. And I promise you this, the I do's at the altar showed them you love them. But it can't be the last time you showed them that you love them. The letters that I wrote to Carol from Iraq made Carol feel like I loved her, and I was 3,000 miles away. Once she figured out how to decipher my handwriting. Point in case. Now, why are wives given the imperative to respect their husbands? And I know what you're thinking, ladies. Can't we just love him enough and it'll all be okay? No. And the reason is that we aren't wired like you. We have this inner man code. And if you If we saw a child or a woman in danger, there's this thing that just rises up inside of us, and we just can't help it. We got to go protect them. Let me give you an example of this. In 2010, when we were ramping up to go on a deployment, my second deployment to Iraq, we were doing training in Fort Hood, Texas, okay? I was in an infantry unit, so typically I did not work with females in the military. We were an all-guy unit. We were going to Iraq or Kuwait for a non-infantry unit mission, so they incorporated women into an all-men's unit. That was fun, okay? So during one of our training exercises, we were in a makeshift city, and they had a whole bunch of Iraqi refugees that were helping us train, okay? And to prove a point to us, they did something very intentional that blew my mind and incorporated and helped me understand the respectful nature of men. Good morning, Sylvester. It is so good to see you, my friend. So good to see you, my friend. Wow. So during this training exercise, you just rocked my world, my friend. During this training exercise, we were in charge of the outside perimeter defense of a building that my lieutenant was inside talking to the townsperson leader, okay? And the townspeople that were acting like Iraqi locals purposely did everything they could to isolate the woman from the men. Instinctively, the men surrounded the woman and pushed her up against the wall and broke the entire security for the building to protect the one girl that they were working with. So instead of protecting what they were supposed to protect, it was their nature to protect the woman who they felt was in danger, and they didn't even realize they were doing it. It is our nature to do it. And us guys live our lives carrying this sense of respect. It's just hardwired into the things that God has made us. And just like the love thing that you ladies have, us guys need to know that our wives care for us and value us above everybody else. That we have your respect. And when guys are in a relationship where there's a constant criticism or nagging or no encouragement, we just die on the inside. We can't live like that. And Peter touches on this in his letter. In 1 Peter 3, 1 and 2, he says this: they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see your respectful and pure conduct. So it's not about the I love yous. It's not about the words, and we'll get to understanding what that means. It's about feeling respected for who we are by what God designed us to be. All right? And I know what you're thinking. Some of you here are thinking, well, I'll respect him when he starts loving me. He's a couch potato. He watches TV all day. He won't even get up to get a job. He doesn't deserve my respect. Or I'll start loving her when I feel like she respects me, because all she does is consistently nag me about how lazy I am. She doesn't realize that I get up and go to work every day of the week and provide for her so she can stay home, but I'm lazy? Right? Wrong. The point is this, that knowledge minus obedience equals rebellion. I'm going to use that in every message that I ever preach from now on, okay? Just because they don't deserve it doesn't mean that you weren't commanded to do it. And if you know and you still choose not to, then that might be the answer to some of your issues in your marriage. That might be the answer to why your marriage isn't working as well as it could. And we are commanded to do this, not because of what the other person is or isn't doing. We are commanded because at the core of how God has created man, at the core of how God created women, it is what they need. And when you refuse to give the other person what they need, what they desire most, we are constantly deflating that person. And this constant deflation of the other person launches us into what is known as the crazy cycle. And the crazy cycle looks like this, and it says this. Picture, beautiful, look at there. It says that without love, she reacts without respect. And then without respect, he reacts without love. And then without love, she reacts without respect. And then without respect, he reacts without love. And if you can't decode what is happening in your relationship, if you can't lean into the understanding that your husband or your wife needs something that you do not, you're going to spin on this cycle. How do I know? Because this was the first 9 years of me and Carol's marriage. I would react without love. She would react without respect. And I tell you what, we got that thing a spinning. And it was because I didn't feel respected. So I would react without love. It was because she didn't feel love, she would react without respect. And I tell you, we were really good at getting this thing going. We were. Not so much anymore, thank God. So what do you do? What do you do? Maybe there are some of you right now that would say, yep, this was what was happening on the car ride on the way to church. Maybe some of you would say, this is what was happening yesterday at the dinner table. So how do we get off this cycle? How do we break the cycle? And the first thing that we need to understand is that there is a difference between men and women. Jesus even points this out in Matthew. Matthew wrote it down. He said in Matthew 19:4, haven't you read that at the beginning, the Creator made them male and female? Well, yeah, we read that at the beginning. God created man, and then he created woman, right? That there is a difference in which God created man and woman. They're not the same. That neither one is wrong, but they are completely different. They're not wrong, they're just different. Not wrong, just different. Your husband is not wrong for being a man. He's just different than you are as a woman. Your wife is not wrong for being a woman. She's just different than you being a man. They're not wrong, they're just different. That men were created to need certain things, and women were created and they need certain things. And when the needs that God has hardwired into us aren't being met by the person that we're in intimate relationship, there's going to be conflict. And we're going to spin out of control. And what ends up happening in conflict, that is in conflict because we don't know any better. We try to give the person on the other side of the conflict what we need most. We really should be looking to see, we should be trying to give them something that they desperately need, not what we need. Now I want to give you two little things that are going to help you navigate this crazy cycle. It might help you get off of it, okay? To help you understand how to start giving the person in the relationship what they need most. And the first thing is this. The first thing is that we need to change our perspective. We need to change our perspective. Because we all come into these relationships with our perspective. God has given girls, they have theirs, and guys have theirs, and it's really seems like they never line up with each other. It's as different as pink is from blue. They don't line up, right? It's like ladies, they see the world through pink lenses, and they speak through a pink megaphone, and they hear through pink headphones. And when you're in conflict with your husband, everything gets filtered through this beautiful pink pair of glasses you have on. And everything that you say is spoken through this pink megaphone, and everything that you hear is heard through these pink headphones. And because you filter everything from your beautiful pink standpoint, you are giving your man what you see he needs, what you hear he needs. But you aren't seeing or giving him what he actually needs. So until you can change your perspective, you won't be able to see or meet the actual deepest cry of his heart to have your respect. Husbands, same thing. You look through the world through your rugged man blue lenses. We see nothing but Smurfs in our world. And you speak through this big, loud megaphone. Hear me roar, ah. And you hear through these ruggedly handsome blue headphones. And because you filter everything through your blue lens, you're not giving the ladies in your life what they so desperately need because you don't see it that way. Because you aren't seeing or giving them what they actually need. And until you can change your perspective, you won't be able to see the actual deepest cry of her heart, which is for you to love them. So in order to get off of this crazy cycle, we have to change our perspective. We have to remember that there is another perspective in this equation of marriage relationships. And here's the question that I want you to ask yourself. Guys, I'm going to start with you. When you are in conflict, I want you to stop, think. It happens quickly once you get used to it. Is what I'm about to say or do going to be perceived as unloving? Is what I'm about to say going to come across as unloving? Even if that's not the intentions of what the words out of my mouth are going to be. Are they going to be interpreted through a blue headphones? Or are they going to be interpreted through pink headphones? Are what you're about to say going to be perceived as unloving? Ladies, stop. Ask yourself, is what I'm about to say going to be perceived as disrespectful? Is what you're about to say to him going to belittle him of who he is or come across as overly critical, make him feel like he isn't worthy of the man card that he thinks he has? He has it. Most of you think it's in your purse, though. Let's be real. At least he lets you think it is. We're not going there. Okay, we're going to stop. Okay, let's get back on track. Sorry. I'll tell you, I don't know why they give me a microphone sometimes, okay? Because we can start asking those questions. When we can actually get to the place where we start asking that, is what I'm about to say going to be perceived as unloving? Is what I'm about to say going to be perceived as disrespectful? We start to remove the lenses, the blue megaphones, the blue headphones, the pink ones. And we start to perceive things as they should be perceived in conflict. And start to perceive them differently through the lens of the other person in the relationship. And we are only ever looking through our perspective, then the things that are in a conflict are never going to get any better. The only thing we care about in conflict most of the time is what we want. Getting our point across that we are right and you are wrong. In most relationships, in conflict, we do the 4 C's to an unhealthy, dysfunctional relationship. You know what the 4 C's are? We try to convince, we try to convict, we try to coerce, and we try to control. If you want to have a miserable, unhealthy, dysfunctional relationship, do those 4 things. I'm giving you the recipe. I'm giving it to you because that's not what it's supposed to be. And in conflict, the point isn't about winning. It's not about convincing them you're right, convicting them of what they're doing wrong, coercing them to see things the way you see them, or controlling the other person. That's not what it's about. The point of conflict is to be resolved in reconciliation. And when we start to change our perspective, resolving in reconciliation, giving them what they so desperately need at the core of who they are, resolving in reconciliation will follow. But you have to change your perspective. So the first thing we need to do is change our perspective. And the second thing is simply we need to break the cycle. We need to break the cycle. And in the crazy cycle, someone is reacting because they aren't receiving. That's really the core of the crazy cycle. She's reacting because she's not getting loved. And he's reacting because he ain't getting respected. And you spin out of control. So you're reacting because you aren't receiving. Right? And this cycle will spin, and it will get faster and faster and crazier and crazier until somebody decides to be the one who says, you know what? you know what? I'm not going to worry about receiving what I need. I'm going to give the other person what they're crying out for desperately. That someone steps up and realizes that they're not doing it because they decide that they're not going to be in rebellion against God. They have the knowledge, so they're going to obey, and they're going to do what God commands them to. They're going to give the other person what they so desperately need. That they're not going to be in rebellion against God. So they're going to love their wives, or that they're going to respect their husband, even though that person isn't doing their part in the relationship. We call this being the mature one. The mature one is the one that understands that God has called them to respect their husbands, to love their wives. And this might be hard to believe, but more often than not, I am the mature one in our relationship, right? I know, it's hard to believe, right? Okay? And it's not because Carol isn't mature, but it's because I feel this overwhelming sense of the man that it is my job to be obedient to God as possible as I can in my life, as the head of my house. So when we're in conflict, I'm going to submit my needs to her needs to make sure she feels loved, even if I'm not being respected. And men, I want to challenge you during this next week to find opportunities to love your wives. Don't take this the wrong way. To love your boss within the parameters of a work relationship. To love your moms. To love your sisters. To love your grandmas. In spite of their disrespect towards you. And ladies, I want to challenge you to look for the same opportunities. For those times where you feel like your husband, your brother, your uncle, your grandpa, your dad is being so unloving towards who you are that you just pour out the respect for them even though they don't deserve it. And when we break the cycle and we change our perspective by getting the eyes off of ourselves and onto the other person in the relationship, things change. And if you're in a relationship that is harmful or abusive, that affording love or affording respect, because you can be men can be just in abusive, harmful relationships just like women can be, whether you believe it or not, it can happen, okay? And the affording love or respect isn't an option, that's a different story, okay? I'm not saying you need to bend over backwards for somebody that's being abusive, okay? But if you you're just not giving love or giving respect because you aren't getting what you want, enjoy spinning. And remember that knowledge without obedience is rebellion. I'm giving you the knowledge. And if you want to be in rebellion, spin. And I know what some of you are thinking. Pastor John, I don't know how to show respect to my husband. I don't know how to show love to my wife. Great news, great news. We're going to talk about that for the next 2 weeks. So you have to come back. But until then, men, I want to challenge you to write your wife a love letter. Wow! Thank you for proving my point. And in that letter, I want you to tell her all the things that you love about her. And trust me, men, there's more than just her body. Ladies, I would challenge you to write your man a note telling him all the things you respect about him. And he is so much more than his job. And then for the next 2 weeks, we're going to break down what couples and chairs are. What is that? We'll get there. You might even actually hear from somebody really cool about one of them. I'm still trying to convince them. Crazy cycle. Without love, she reacts without respect. Without respect, he reacts without love. Change your perspective. Break the cycle. Let's pray. Father, I thank you that you gave Paul, a single man, the wisdom of what marriage should look like, even though he was single. That he was so in tune with your spirit that 2,000 years ago, he gave us the principles of love and respect. Not wrong, just different. So Father, right now, I would ask that you give everybody here the courage to be brave enough to do what was challenged. Give them the courage to be the mature one in their relationship and say, I'm not getting what I want, so I'm going to give what they need to break the cycle. Give them the courage to take responsibility for their own actions, because your response is your responsibility. And then give the other person on the other side the courage to own their part so that there might be reconciliation in marriages, even starting now. That on the way home, if there was unloving actions or disrespectful actions on the way here, Father, that there would be forgiveness and reconciliation on the way home. That all of a sudden they had this view that they can see, oh, I see why he reacted that way because I was being unloving. Oh, I see why she reacted that way because I was being whatever it might be, Father, that you give them the eyes to see it the way that you see it. You give them the eyes to see it through the lens of Jesus Christ and the cross. And we'll get to this, the eyes to see through the purple lenses, because pink and blue make purple, and that's you. To see it through the lens of Jesus. To hear your voice saying, give them what they need, not because you're not receiving, but because I've commanded you to. And then the courage to take the step knowing that there's going to be reconciliation based off of what your word promises. We ask all these things in the most precious name, most powerful name of Jesus, who's worthy of our praise even in our own depravity. He's the name above all names. And we thank you for that name this morning, that there might be reconciliation in marriages, even if there's things that we don't feel we can come back from. And I believe it with all my heart because I've experienced it beyond a shadow of a doubt. We ask all these things in Jesus' name, amen.